What is going on, everybody? What is going on? We are officially here and officially live. We're back with another show for the Las Vegas Raiders. I am your host, Darion of the Spotlight Raiders Talk, and I have my co-host here, Eli. What's going on, man?
Back in the city, man. Back in Philadelphia, and I guess we couldn't have picked a better time. It's pretty crazy out there. So I hope everybody's staying safe. In their homes, or if they're out and about. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Make sure everybody is staying safe and everything that's going on out there in the world. Philadelphia is just really in like shreds right now. So I really have to say, like, everybody just make sure y'all stay safe. Um don't get into no trouble. Just try to stay out the way as much as possible. We do have a very impact show for you today. A very, very impact show for you. Shout out to everybody that is on Bigo Live. I am officially on Bigo Live as well. We are live on Facebook as well as YouTube. Thank everybody for tuning in, and we are going to have a awesome show today. How you feel about the topic so far, Eli? Talking about the show and everything.
I'm pretty excited, man. I think that it's been a bit since we kind of got together because of the holiday and everything, and I hope everybody had a Memorial Day, whether if it was a fun one and they could go out or whatnot. But there's a lot of Raider stuff to talk about, whereas maybe not exactly tons of roster moves or whatever, but some things we can chat about in the meantime while we're waiting for this season to kick off.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, we will get to the questions as soon as later once we get through the topics. And we're just going to go strictly right down the line. And we're going to start with the first topic of the night, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders Dream Team all-time starting offense. Now, we talked a little brief about this, Eli, before the show actually came on. And it's pretty interesting to see what we saw when it came to the dream team of an all-time starting offense. We could go back and forth of which players we could go right down the line. If you do want to change it, that's absolutely fine. If you want to change it to take some people out and put some people in, that's absolutely fine. So if you want to go with the first, we could go back and forth, or we could just look at the players from there.
Well, we can just go down the line, but I'm curious as your thoughts to the first of all, when we do go, you'll notice that they decided to run this offense in a double tight end set, single back, double tight end set. So there's actually two tight ends on this Raiders all-time offense and only one running back. I think that's the biggest point of discussion for me as far as, do we think this second tight end is warranted over a second running back? And I think we can discuss that, and maybe some people in the chat have their opinions as well. But I think as far as any changes I would make, that might be the only one. But let's go through the list and see what everybody thinks.
All right, so the list that we have here, we're gonna go is straight down the line. So the first is starting at quarterback. They do have a quarterback, and the quarterback that they did pick for the All-Star, well, the Dream Team, is Ken Stabler from 1970 to 1979. I mean, the guy played 15 seasons in the NFL. I mean, and most of those was with the Raiders. Stabler was known best as a flamboyant type of style of play, left-handed quarterback, which I love because the fact that I am left-handed myself. It does comes up as one of the legendary guys in our actual Raider organization, and I couldn't pick a better quarterback to start off this all-time offense. But in your personal opinion, how you feel about this quarterback being this for the all-time starting offense?
I think it has to be Kenny Stabler. You're looking at a franchise here, and with all the quarterback talk we have now, this is a franchise that really hasn't had its share of great quarterbacks, right? I mean, I think that if you really want to say great quarterbacks, Stabler might be the only one. Everybody talks about how Jim Plunkett won those two Super Bowls, and Plunkett definitely did his part to help win those, but I would never consider him a great quarterback. A lot of people think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that he was more of just the perfect quarterback for the great Raiders teams that he led. But as far as being a great quarterback, Kenny Stabler certainly was that. I think that the only player that maybe could even come close in his brief time with the Raiders was Rich Gannon. But I think that at the end of the day, the Raiders' greatest teams were those 70s teams that Stabler played with. And for me, I think it's got to be him. I'll put him in there, 9 times out of 10.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think that when it comes to him, like, I mean, you could talk about Rich Gannon, you could talk about other quarterbacks, but I think for just a dream team starting offense, I think Ken Stabler is the guy that you should go with as a quarterback, especially for the Raiders. So the next one that we do have on our list is running back Marcus Allen, 1982 to 1992. We all know Marcus Allen was a first round draft selection of the Raiders back in 1982. Had a successful career with his college ranks, especially playing at USC. He made immediate impact with the Raiders, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. He helped the Raiders to their third Super Bowl championship in 1983, leading the way with 191 yards. It earned him Most Valuable Player in those honors. He was a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, 2-time first All-Team All-American. He was a dynamic running back, Most Valuable Player in 1985. He did rush for 1,759 yards, 11 touchdowns, while hauling in 67 receptions for 555 yards. Allen is on the franchise all-time leading rusher at 8,545 yards and rushing touchdowns with 79. Was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2003. I have no problem with the running back being Marcus Allen. In my personal opinion, I think Marcus Allen is one of the greatest Raiders running backs of all time. Probably one of these best running backs of all time in the NFL itself, knowing that he made an immediate impact. How you feel about picking Marcus Allen as the running back here?
Well, this is where it kind of I get a little hesitant, right? Because probably one of my favorite football players and athletes of all time was Bo Jackson, just because of how physically dominant he was as an athlete. And, just the things that he could do with the football were so supernatural sometimes, and it's just so much fun to watch. And you see those highlight videos, and he was that and more as a running back, and probably the best, most talented running back when it came to actually being a big, fast runner who could carry the ball 25 times a game. That being said, with his brevity and the fact that he only played half seasons and he only played 4 seasons, and Marcus Allen not only had the MVP seasons with the Raiders and a little bit more longevity, won the Super Bowl, but also he had an MVP season as well, so he was the most valuable player of the entire league in 85. So I think that even though I like Bo Jackson, and I think that if I had to pick a running back for my team and line him up with a fullback and just pound the rock, I'd pick Bo Jackson. But if you're building a dream team and especially if you're a single back offense, Marcus Allen's a do everything running back that can catch the ball at the backfield. He can throw the ball. He was a great passer and had a few touchdown passes in the inside the red zone and even outside the red zone. I believe I saw one that he threw. It was perfect pass. It was like 35 yards or something like that. So Marcus Allen, I think I'm comfortable with giving him the dream team, especially if you're going to single back offense. Now, if you're going to take away one of the tight ends and you're going to make this a 2-back offense, I say you have him and Bo Jackson. What do you think?
I definitely agree there. I mean, knowing that back then it was all back in the day, it was like a 3-set tight end type of thing. I wouldn't mind having Bo Jackson and Marcus Allen as a 1-2 punch in the backfield. I wouldn't have no issue with that due to the fact that Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson, you got to have both of them in this offense. You just can't just leave one off and then have the other one on. Both of them had immediate impact when they came to the Raiders in their primes. And just take one of those tight ends out and add Bo Jackson there. Is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just how I see it. Just take one of those tight ends off and add Bo Jackson to it.
I tend to agree. I think we're on the same page here.
Right. I definitely agree here. So the next one is the wide receiver. And the wide receiver they do have is Fred Biletnikoff. aka Stickum from 1965 to 1978. We all know he played his whole entire seasons with the Silver and Black, his 14 years with them. Franchise's biggest stars, Biletnikoff, was doable. I can say that he only weighed 190 pounds, according to what Just Blonde Baby said. But he had 1,000 yards receiving, but consistently was named, registered 40 catches for 500 yards in 10 straight seasons. Highlights of Biletnikoff's career when the Raiders is being named most valuable player in the Super Bowl in a game that he recorded 4 receptions for 79 yards. He is on the list of all-time ranks. Biletnikoff sits at 589 receptions, 8,974 yards, and total receptions was 76. In 94, College Football created a award that was named wide receiver for the Biletnikoff Award. And the other one that we do have is wide receiver Tim Brown, which is all-time rankings, as one of the most legendary players in our legendary receivers that came out of the Raiders. Knowing that he's seventh in the NFL, but he first with Raiders with 14,934 yards. He has 100 touchdowns. Not only he's a go-to guy as a receiver, but he was definitely a key part to the Raiders' offense when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Buccaneers. So Brown is iconic as well. So how do you feel about these two wide receivers being a part of this Dream Team offense?
Yeah, I mean, these are the two of the greatest Raiders of all time, both in the Hall of Fame, and this is a no-brainer, right? I mean, Jerry Rice kind of doesn't really count as far as being in the Raiders Dream Team. I mean, he was one of the best football players, in general, but I think that you can't really put him on this team for the Raiders, especially since the years that he played while they were pretty fantastic, doesn't match the length of the careers that these two guys have. So it's Brown and it's Biletnikoff. I guess the closest guy you talk about maybe would be Cliff Branch, who has had a great career with the Raiders. I agree should be in the Hall of Fame, but I think these two guys, man, if you just have two wide receivers, these are the two guys.
I have to agree. I really don't think. To me, people say Cliff Branch, like Watts Raider said, Cliff Branch, he's going with the greatest Raider wide receiver. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Me, I just felt like Biletnikoff and Tim Brown had an impact on the team and was leaders of the team when they did play in the era of when they played with the Raiders at the end of the day. So me personally, I don't mind it. Even if you swap out Cliff Branch with Tim Brown or you swap out Cliff Branch with Biletnikoff, either way, it still would be two great wide receivers here to have on this dream team. Even if they did, mind you, if back then they did have a 3 wide receiver set, you could add Cliff Branch to that. But knowing that they had like so many tight ends back in the day, that's why it's only 2 wide receivers is able to be on this starting offense.
Yeah, I think that you keep those 2 wide receivers, and then Cliff Branch. When you're going to your 3 wide offense, you move Tim Brown into the slot, and you have Branch and Biletnikoff on the outside. I think that's the way to go. In your 3 wide receiver set.
Right, I do agree with you, Watts Raider. All 3 of them are absolutely legends. I absolutely agree with you there. So the tight ends that they do have on this list, they have the first one they have is Todd Christensen, which is 1979 to 1988, and they have tight end Dave Casper from 1974 to 1980 and in 1984. Now, how you feel about these 2 tight ends being a part of the Dream Team? I thought they probably would have had 3 tight ends, but they only have 2 on here. How you feel about that?
Well, I mean, again, like we said in the beginning, they're the people that made this team couldn't pick between Christensen and Casper obviously is such an iconic, part of Raiders lore with the ghost of the post and his nickname as the Ghost. But Todd Christensen was such a weapon in those 80s teams. I mean, remember, they didn't really have in the early to mid 80s, after Cliff Branch kind of fell to the wayside as an older wide receiver, they really didn't have a great, outside threat. So Todd Christensen and Marcus Allen in the passing game, it was really Todd Christensen was the guy that Plunkett and Mark Williams and all those mid 80s quarterbacks really targeted. He set records that stood for a really long time at the tight end position for receptions. And, he was an all pro a few times. So if I had to pick one and then have Bo Jackson as my second running back, I would pick Todd Christensen over, the ghost. But I mean, that's just me. That's my era that I grew up in. A lot of people might think Dave Casper is just so much of a legendary Raider name and part of their history that you can't leave him off the team. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if it goes off to like today's offense where they only run a one tight end or a two tight end set, depending on knowing like today's NFL, it is spread. So like you even have tight ends end up in a slot or have one tight end that's blocking. So even both of them on here, I wouldn't mind. But if you want to add Bo Jackson or add a Cliff Branch and take one of them out, I'll have to go with Todd Christensen as well over Dave Casper. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I just felt like he was more efficient as a tight end than Dave Casper was. Dave Casper was there for like the passing, but you could tell Dave Casper was more like a blocking tight end than a catching tight end in my instance.
Well, Dave Casper he was definitely a threat down the field and really helped the Raiders offense open up that deep passing, sure. And I think that was a part of what Al Davis loved about his tight ends being such a weapon, Billy Cannon being a converted running back and utilizing that speed and athleticism at the tight end position. I mean, if Al Davis was alive right now, he would just be completely enthralled with Darren Waller and even Cook the year before, because he loved speed and athleticism at the tight end position because he wanted the tight ends to go deep down the field, and that was Dave Casper and to an extent Christensen as well.
Right. I could definitely agree there. So we're just going to keep moving forward. So the offensive tackle, actually they have two offensive tackles, like they have the two for each. So we're gonna go with the offensive tackle. They have Art Shell and from 1968 to 1982, and they have Lincoln Kennedy 1996 to 2003. Now with Art Shell, he made 169 starts, had a 15 over his 15-year career with the Raiders as itself. In 2019, they celebrated its 100th season, and Arshell was named on the NFL 100 All-Time team. From 1972 to 1980, Shell was selected to the Pro Bowl each of the seasons in 1974 and 1977, which was a first-team All-Pro. And Arshell had two stints as a head coach for the Raiders as well. Being 56-52 record. And with his first stint in 54-38 in 5 seasons, making the playoffs 3 times. Now we do have Lincoln Kennedy, which is 1996 to 2003, where you have it as he was the first round pick in '93 NFL draft by the Atlanta Falcons, but he ended up, being with us, being traded to us for a 5th round pick. And Kennedy was the anchor of the offensive line for 8 years, making 151 starts. His finest was in 2001 and 2002, where he was named first team All Pro. As a member of the Raiders, he was named at 3 consecutive Pro Bowls and was a leader of the offensive line and helped the Raiders get to the Super Bowl in 2003. How you feel about these two offensive tackles here?
Well, I think that I can't disagree with this, right? I think the only other player you could think for the other tackle, Art Shell is a shoe in, right? Like he's one of the greatest offensive tackles in the entire history of the NFL, Hall of Famer, and all that stuff. I think the only other player that you could maybe put in for Lincoln Kennedy would be perhaps Henry Lawrence, who was kind of like a stalwart offensive tackle in those 80s teams that won. But other than that, I mean, I think Lincoln Kennedy, he was an All-Pro a couple years and really got the recognition, which I think Lawrence just kind of had the longevity and was just on a lot of winning teams. So I give the nod to him over Lawrence, and I think that's I think that's the offensive tackles right there for sure.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think I like these two here, knowing that we do have a lot of offensive tackles. Um, a lot of offensive tackles that actually come through and play well with us. But we do have the offensive guards, and of
Well,
course, it's
real quick, before we move on to the offensive guards, I do want to tell a lot, some people, we have a lot of, just like yourself, a lot of Raiders fans who are, and maybe a little bit younger and are familiar. But I will say my favorite, outside of Art Shell, my favorite offensive tackle that ever played for the Raiders. Unfortunately, I never got to see him play, but read a lot of books. John Madden's book talks a lot about him. And if you look up YouTube about offensive tackle for the Raiders, Bob Brown. He is a Hall of Fame offensive tackle that played most of his years in Philadelphia, but he played 3 years in Oakland, 71, 72, and 73. So he never won a Super Bowl, but played for some great Raiders teams. And he was one of the most mean, badass offensive tackles. If you guys have a couple minutes, tonight or at some point, just go on YouTube and research Bob Brown, offensive tackle. He played for the Raiders. He played for the Eagles. And I think he played for the LA Rams. But anyway, he would have been a personal favorite of mine to throw on this team.
absolutely, absolutely. I cannot agree there. I mean, I heard of him, but I never really got a chance to watch him play. So I'll definitely go look him up as well, knowing that most of his career was with the Philadelphia Eagles. But the offensive guards that we do have on here is number one is offensive guard Gene Upshaw. Now Gene Upshaw was there from 1967 to 1981. Another Hall of Famer who's considered one of the greatest guards to ever play, like Art Shell. Upshaw was selected to the 100 all-time team. In addition to that honor, Upshaw was 7-time Pro Bowl selection, 5-time All-Pro, and a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Upshaw was well known for his ability to get out the way, get leeway for the running back on sweep plays. His Hall of Fame induction speech referred to him to running over helpless defensive backs on sweep plays. The greatest throw of his career. He's a member of the 1970s All-Decade Team, and many feel that he's the greatest Raider of all time. And then I think I know how to pronounce his name, but Steve Winniski, if I said that correctly.
Steve Wisniewski, yeah.
Yeah, Winniski. Okay, from 1989 to 2001. Haven't received a call from Canton yet, which is kind of surprising to me how this guy did not get a call from Canton yet, but he certainly has a resume for it to be in the Hall of Fame. After being selected in the second round of the 1989 draft by the Dallas Cowboys, he was immediately traded to the Raiders, and he spent his 13 years with us. He was selected to six straight Pro Bowls, 8 overall from 1990 to 95. His durability was impressive. Started 206 games. No, 208 games, my bad. 208 games in his NFL career. In addition, named the first team All-Pro twice and was selected to the 1990s All-Decade Team. It's only a matter of time if we see this guy in a Hall of Fame with a gold jacket. Now, how do you feel about these two offensive guards here?
I think that Gene Upshaw is one of the best players in NFL history. He's a lock. And Steve Wisniewski was the best offensive lineman probably in the modern history of the Raiders. Once Art Shell and Gene Upshaw and those guys kind of went to the wayside and retired, Steve Wisniewski is probably, after those 70s Raiders and maybe, the 70s, 80s, early 80s Raiders that won their championship, he was by far the best offensive lineman in Raiders history after those guys. So, I mean, both those two guys got to be the guards.
You can't go wrong with it. You can't go wrong with these two guys. They're, Gene Upshaw's already a Hall of Famer, and Wiz is right there. Needs to be getting a call from Canton. I don't know what's the hold up there with Wiz, and he's been doing. He's one of those ferocious linemen that I love watching growing up. As a Raiders fan, a lot of my family that's Raiders fans as well. That's on the West Coast. I do have family on the West Coast as well. They tell me a lot about him too. So, no, it's not about winning, Larry Fleming. It's not about winning. This is a
This is a team.
We're just doing a starting office of a dream team. So this is nothing like comparisons or anything of that nature. It's just that it's just an all stars. Yeah, it's just a dream team. It's just a dream team from the quarterbacks to the offensive line to the tight ends to the wide receivers to the running backs. That's all that is. So we gonna go into the last but not least, but the center, and the center is Jim Otto, which is 1960 to 1974, and anchoring his impressive offensive line with the most crazy. He was just a beast to me. I watched a few of him on NFL films. One of the best offensive linemen in Raider history, Jim Otto, was a centerpiece of the Raiders offensive line for 15 years. It was known for many things, including intelligence, dedication, and leadership. He was dominant blocker and great range as a center. Now, Otto was the first team All Pro and a ridiculously 10 times, and a Pro Bowl selection 12 times as well. He was a member of the 1968 loss to Vince Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl, but he was along with Art Shell and Gene Upshaw, where they named the top NFL 100 team and was the best center in league history. That's what they say according to JustBallBaby.com. How do you feel about Jim Otto? And just to let you know, Larry Fleming, yeah, you have two tackles, two guards in the center. So at the end of the day, it would have
You
been
get both.
Gene. It would have been both of them in the starting lineup anyway. But you got it, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jim Otto, you need to give it to him, right? And, this is another position that the Raiders historically have, some really good players. But Jim Otto is synonymous with the Raiders. If you don't talk, even if you talk to somebody who's not a Raiders fan, hey, do you know who Jim Otto is? They know the double zeros. They know his iconic face mask on his helmet. They know who Jim Otto, the Raider, was. So you got to give it to him. It's actually interesting that a lot of people don't really remember that he never won a Super Bowl with the Raiders. He only won, I think he won a AFL title, but no Super Bowl with the Raiders, lost against the Packers, but he retired before that win against the Vikings. That was actually Dave Dalby was the center for all three championship Raiders teams. Of course, then you have, a string of four centers in, I think, like 30, 40 years or something like that. I think it was Jim Otto started in 1960, and you had Dave Dalby till like 85, and then you had Don Mosbar till about, I think, like Barrett Robbins in 2000. So, I mean, you had, I think in like 45 years, you have four centers, which is pretty impressive with that longevity with the Raiders. But Jim Otto was the best.
Absolutely. Jim Otto is definitely the triple OG according to Watts Raider. But I just want to let everybody know this is a dream team of a starting offense. It's not it's an all-time starting offense. It's the Las Vegas Raiders dream team. So they didn't do defense. So I'm just going to go back and tell y'all which ones it was. It was Ken Stabler at quarterback. Then you had Marcus Allen as your running back. Your wide receivers was Fred Bilentikov and Tim Brown was your wide receivers. Then you had tight end as Todd Christensen and Dave Casper as your tight ends. Your offensive tackles was Art Shell and Lincoln Kennedy. Your offensive guards was Gene Shaw and Steve Winooski. And then you had your center as Jim Otto. That was the list of the all-time dream team starting offense. For anybody that's watching in the chat right now, if you feel some type of way about it, if you want to grade that starting offense, please put your grade in the comments so we can see it as well. But we're going to get on to the next topic as well. And that next topic is the Raiders looking to add another first round wideout in the 2020 mock draft. Now, let me just go find this real quick because this was a very interesting thing. Because if we're looking to go look for another Alabama wideout in the 2020 draft, that means we're not looking to make the playoffs in some instance here. And it says after a year, the Las Vegas added Henry Ruggs to the first round of the 2020 draft. They're looking back to Tuscaloosa for another one, which is what's the name of this guy's name? I forgot his name. They got him right on here. Oh, his name is Devontae Smith with the 15th overall pick. Now, they said, according to NFL mock drafts, they released a very early 2021 NFL mock draft, And the Raiders once again added Alabama elite wideout after selecting Ruggs in 2020, and Mike Mayock and company select Devontae Smith with the number 15 overall pick in 2021. Now they saying that Smith is a tremendous talent, and obviously Mike Mayock had like adding players from a powerhouse schools like Alabama and Clemson. But however, if Ruggs and Edwards do what they supposed to do and Tyrell Williams bounces back, then the Raiders will set the top of the depth chart at wide receiver and looking to target another one in April. But in addition to the second year wideout to Hunter Renfrow, he had a solid rookie campaign, finishing with 100 yards in back-to-back games and close out seasons. But to me, I feel like the Raiders are building around Carr, and they could find out, if they nearly could land him as an MVP, for short years. But short years ago, he could have been because he had weapons around him. But there are enough weapons to go around to score points for anyone this season. But it kind of wears me because if we 15th pick of overall, right? That means we kind of on the border of making the playoffs this season. Like, how you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I guess you got to talk about something, right? So these, mock drafts that come in around now, projecting on the current state of the Raiders roster, it's kind of weird because they just drafted 2 wide receivers this year, on top of, Renfrow and having Williams. So I guess in this, they think that Williams is going to falter and they're going to be using this pick to kind of replace him and have him step in with Ruggs and Renfrow as your kind of starting 3 wide receivers. It's just too early to tell. You could just as easily say, wow, Trayvon Mullen didn't turn out. So look, they're going back to the well and getting another cornerback in the first round. Same thing could be said about, Cleveland Farrell's not really, getting it. Man, we're going back to the well and getting another defensive lineman in the first round. So it could be any of these position groups that the Raiders are banking on their young players and their newly draft players to step up and fill, quality starts in their lineup. So it's way too early to tell. Yeah, he'd be great, but we very well could have another more pressing hole in the first round that we need to fill.
And that's what I kind of agree with Watts Raiders saying as well, saying that if Williams plays well, then the Raiders might re-sign him. So I don't mind looking at a receiver, but at the same time, I'm thinking 15th overall is kind of on the borderline of us not making the playoffs in some instance there. If we have that 15th overall pick, I can see us having a first round pick regardless of what happened to us next year anyway. But I just don't know about another Alabama receiver. I mean, I don't mind going after a big name wide receiver, but I mean, I think we did that enough. I think we did that with Brian Edwards, and we did that with Lynn Bowder, because Lynn Bowder might play a little bit of receiver as well. So you just never know. Just never know, depending on what can happen in next season. So on to the next topic. Is that the Las Vegas Raiders, according to JustBlogBaby.com, they say Henry Ruggs III and Brian Edwards could be a form of a dynamic duo, meaning that one of the goals for the Las Vegas Raiders is coming into the 2019 season was to improve the wide receiver group and provide quarterback Derek Carr with some intriguing options on the outside. Now, with the selections of Alabama Henry Ruggs and South Carolina's Brian Edwards, along with Lynn Bowden Jr., of course they certainly did that. But aside from the obvious talent and most intriguing aspect of Edwards and Ruggs is different things that they bring to the position based on athleticism and body type. Now we all know that Henry Ruggs is like 5'11", 188 pounds, but at the combine he blew the scouts away with a blazing speed of a 4.240. And Edwards, on the other hand, is 6'3", 212 pounds. And he's definitely not no slouch in the speed department when he ran a 4.45 at that size. Now, I can say that Ruggs is known with his explosive ability to turn yardage into routes like slants or bubble screens or anything of that nature, knowing that Ruggs did have 98 catches at Alabama and a whooping 24 of them were for touchdowns. Now, I can say for both of these guys, they're going to be a dynamic duo. But my question to you is, where do you see Tyrell Williams fitting in this, and where do you see Hunter Renfro fitting in this here? I don't know what happened to. Oh, there
Sorry,
you go.
I lost my internet connection there. I needed to get off my phone there. Anyway, yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm popping in, and I'm not really sure where you left off. But this is
So,
funny because
so my
because
question was like with the dynamic duo of Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards, where does that leave Tyrell Williams, and where does that leave Hunter Renfro? No, and Len Bowden Jr. because he's going to be the joker of the offense. So where does that leave them, knowing we have this dynamic duo here?
well, I mean, I think it leaves Williams. It certainly negates the first thing that they posted, which is that you know that the Raiders would draft a Smith in the first round last year or next year. They wouldn't be drafting him in the first round. They would have their two wide receivers of the future already. And I think that as far as Renfro would stay in the slot, and then Williams would become more of a fourth wide receiver, and they would spend a lot of time kind of rotating in and out. I see those four, if Edwards and Ruggs can play up to the ability we hope they can, I see those four as just being interchangeable throughout the offense and being kind of taking each other's snaps and being different focal points for John Gruden to get them into space and make plays based on time and down and distance and score and all that stuff.
And I think there'll be definitely I think it'll be a lot of packages for Renfro, a lot of packages for Williams. There's gonna be packages for Lynn Bowden as well, for the running back position and the wide receiver position. Just to open up the defense, instead of him stacking eight in the box and trying to go after Josh Jacobs. So it's definitely gonna be a rotation of wide receivers. I just feel like these are going to be the 1-2 punch of the future for our Raiders team. And Henry
Agreed.
Ruggs and Brian Edwards is probably going to be that future. And if we do add another receiver, some receivers end up being released by us because we have so many wide receivers on the roster already.
Right.
All right, so the next topic that we do have, we're going to knock that off here. And this topic really makes me mad. And it just really gets on my nerves about this. But ESPN, I got a bone to pick with y'all. I got a serious bone to pick with y'all. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because they gonna say that ESPN wrong to rank the Las Vegas Raiders dead last in the AFC East. And they didn't show no love to us at all. So for what I'm seeing here, according to ESPN, they look like they have Kansas City at 1, the Chargers at 2, Denver at 3, and us dead last. Now, what it says is that, according to the Pro Football Index on May 26th, ESPN Self Walder ranked the Raiders at number 23 overall, and in the teams in the AFC West, ranking them and puts them behind the three other teams in the division, which is kind of really absurd to me, in my personal opinion, considering how much better the roster is in 2020 and where they finished up last year. Coming off a 7-win season, which is a 3-game improvement, the Raiders have issues on both sides of the ball, including getting better at the linebacker position, but in addition of Derek Carr entering his third season under John Gruden's offense, is a fresh setting of a career high of a passing yard with a minimal weapons at wide receiver. So, what it's saying according to ESPN is saying that they project total is 6.9, and that's with the shade better than the New York Jets, which is 24% chance of making the playoffs with the expanding playoffs, and the Raiders' chances could be much higher, but until they begin to get it done on the field, there's no way this team is going to do much love in this off season. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm just saying, you really just compared us to the Jets. I just don't see where they really talking about like having us dead last. I completely disagree with this. How you feel about it?
I mean, honestly, on paper, it looks like the Raiders have taken all of their issue positions, wide receiver, linebacker, cornerback, and have addressed them in some way, whether it's in the draft or free agency. And I think a team that takes all of your major holes and problems and improves them usually should be an improved team. I think that that's what all, Raiders fans are expecting. People that follow the team are very aware of how terrible the linebacking core was the last decade plus. And you're going to take two of the better free agents out there at the linebacking position and put them in. If they play to the best of their ability and the ability that we're hoping that they can play, not like Joyner did last year, but something more like Trent Brown and Incognito did. If those guys play up to their ability at linebacker, and you make your linebacking crew go from a 4 to a 7 or an 8, I mean, you're a better team than you were last year. If you take the same in your cornerback group, if you take Amikamura and you take some of the new draftees and you take your cornerback position from a 5 to a 6 or a 7, you're a better team than you were last year. So I don't know. I guess they just don't really understand how much of an impact those two position groups and wide receiver will be if they do in fact play the way that we hope they do. So I think these are people just looking and saying, oh, they still have Derek Carr, the Raiders are still the Raiders, meh. So I don't think anybody really knows what they're talking about over in the ESPN too long didn't read type answer.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree here. I think on paper that we did address all our problems there. We just got to see how it, translates onto the field, knowing that we're very far behind because there was no OTAs at all to, get in sync with the new players, with the rookies coming in. And training camp is going to make a big part for it. But Robert Kilpatrick said, hey, bro, have you seen the Watts Raider simulation, Madden Chiefs and Raiders game? Man, Madden got the Raiders playing like the 2018 Raiders. The Raiders are going to surprise the league this year, are in for L. I didn't get a chance to watch that one just yet, but I am going to look at it tonight. But I feel like they're comparing us to the Jets, and I really disagree with that part. I think we are a better football team than the Jets, in my personal opinion, especially on paper. I don't pay attention to ESPN, but I just felt as though that having us in the bottom, knowing that we have one of the best divisions in football, I totally disagree with this, man.
And we've said this before. The Chargers and the Broncos, the Donkeys, the Chargers and the Broncos have both gotten better in the offseason as well. And I think that just for whatever reason, especially because the Chargers, have a different change at quarterback, I think that and they're already improving, they're improving an already great defense. I think maybe they look at those changes and really kind of rate those more so than what the Raiders have done. I don't know. I just don't see how, as a pundit, you can look at what the Raiders have done to their roster and not see major improvements. But again, until they start playing on the field, we don't know how great those improvements really are. And so I think maybe they're just being, it's a bear market for the Raiders at this point, and everyone's kind of just waiting and seeing.
And Watch Raider, I got to hit you up, bro. Hopefully we can get you on this show on Sunday nights as well. Hopefully we could get you on the show as well. But we're moving on to the next part of this here, which is kind of surprising to me, which is not surprising, but I kind of laughed at this, where Eli Apple was able to sign with the Panthers when he reportedly agreed with the Raiders. I think this is pretty funny to me, knowing that the Panthers did lose James Bradbury. And now he signs with the Carolina Panthers, which we played them in week 1. So this is a very interesting topic to me. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because according to RaidersWire.com, in the first week of free agency and last March, Raiders and the Eli Apple reportedly had a deal in place that would pay Eli Apple $6 million this season. 2 weeks later, the deal fell apart for unknown reasons. Now, about 2 months later, Eli Apple has signed with the Carolina Panthers. It's time, it's official, and it's time for the numbers, as far as you see, as friendly, reportedly what he's going to be getting. So my thing is this: he's definitely taking less with the Panthers than he would have took with us. So he did sign a 1 year deal worth $3 million per source. That includes a $750,000 signing bonus. All things considered, a nice payday for Eli Apple, but I feel like he's still not getting enough. I mean, it doesn't make sense to to see that $3 million is exactly half of 6 million, but he did agree with 6 million with the Raiders. I just think it's funny to me that he signs with the Panthers. No, we played them week 1. So, how you feel about this? So, what's your opinion on this?
I mean, you and I weren't really super excited about an Eli Apple signing anyway. So good riddance from where I'm standing here. And it's pretty interesting that it was pointed out that for even as much as Eli Apple did end up getting, which was about 3 million, that's about as much as our new starting safety and potentially starting cornerback. We bolstered our secondary with 2 potential starting quality players, and instead of just Eli Apple. So that's fine. Sign him for $3 million, and hopefully Henry Ruggs burns the shit out of him in week 1.
I get it, yo. I'm not even mad that he's with the Carolina Panthers because he's going to get smoked in week
Yeah,
1 by us. So
totally.
it
I
is
mean,
what it is.
who cares? Good for you, Eli Apple. How many
Right,
touchdowns going to give up for us? I mean, that's all I really care about.
right. So NFL.com made a bold prediction that the Raiders running back Josh Jacobs would win the 2020 rushing title. Now, the Raiders usually come up with we've usually come up with bold predictions like this. Josh Jacobs did they said according to him Josh Jacobs will win the rushing title. Now the Raiders' 2nd-year running back is physical, speedy, and fresh. He just averaged 123 carries over the past 4 seasons of football, 3 with Alabama, 1 in the NFL. Yes, a shoulder injuries into his fantastic rookie season where he rushed for 1,150 yards, forced and missed tackles as a runner, according to Pro Football Focus. He will recover and he will be very more dominant this year. So in 2020, the presence of the rookie speed of Henry Ruggs the third should loosen up things, preventing teams from always stacking the box, which I stated earlier. A year removed from Antonio Brown's bullcrap and Derek Carr's passing attack, now that he has the offensive weapons, the Raiders' offensive line is very talented, and it will provide Jacobs with plenty of room to truck defenders and have defenders miss. Jacobs logged in 242 carries last season, and they think that number could get closer to that fellow Alabama alum Derrick Henry, who had carried it a league high of 303 times in 2019. So they do say that he might win the rushing title. That is the bold prediction. How do you feel about Josh Jacobs coming back off of the injuries that he had, and he's gonna come back stronger and win the rushing title?
I do think he's going to come back stronger, and I do think he's going to, recover from his injury and be a focal point for the Raiders offense, and one that the NFL and the entire league definitely is put on notice by. Everybody knows who Josh Jacobs is as far as a rookie of the year candidate. They're going to see him as one of the better offensive players. That being said, I don't actually think he's going to lead the league in rushing. I think that he is going to have more rushing yards, in more game, but he's not going to lead the league in rushing. He may have more rushing yards. I think he's going to have more receiving yards. I think they're going to utilize him more in the passing game, maybe some more touchdowns. He will no doubt be a focal point of the offense. He will continue to be a fan favorite, one of the best Raider players, probably make the Pro Bowl. But I think that with Bowden Jr. coming in, I think John Gruden is not just going to use him as a joker, in the running or in the passing game, but also they're going to run him a lot. I have a feeling that they're going to be utilizing Bowden in the run game a little bit more than some people expect. and him and Rashard are going to take a little bit more carries throughout the year, and to keep Josh Jacobs fresh. So I don't see Josh Jacobs leading the league in rushing, but I do see him again having a fantastic year and being one of the Raiders' best offensive players.
Robert Kilpatrick said, "Do I think Josh Jacobs will have 1,500 yards this year? I think he could have 1,500 yards this year. I think that the way the NFL is set up now, I think he could get 1,500 yards, but 303 carries like Derrick Henry, I think that's just impossible. That's going to run Josh Jacobs into the ground, knowing that we have running backs like a Jalen Richard to pick up some of them carries and Lem Bowden to pick up some of them carries. It definitely takes a load off of Josh Jacobs. That's why we re-signed Richard and got Bowden in the draft. That's the reason why. And then we're going to have to throw the ball to probably Josh Jacobs more too in the backfield. So do I think he could win the rushing title? No. But do I think he could be a top 5 running back in this league? Absolutely. That's
Yeah, I mean,
just,
and
you
top
know,
five running back in the league doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, unless you're specifically meaning top five in yards rushing. I think
yeah,
that
and yards rushing.
okay. I mean, he was up there. To be fair, he was up there for a little bit before Derrick Henry kind of ran away with things. I mean, towards the end of the year, he was up in the top like 6 or 7 in rushing yards. You know, they are going to pound the rock, and they're going to continue to run the ball, and they're going to be hopefully they're going to continue to be successful with it with Josh Jacobs. I just think, John Gruden wants to keep his running backs fresh, all of them. He wants to keep them as effective as possible all 4 quarters of the game and throughout all 16 games of the year. So I see Josh Jacobs being utilized a little bit differently, but still effectively and a lot for the Raiders. I just don't see him being a guy like Derrick Henry that gets 300 carries a year, in a season. I don't think that Gruden would want that for his offense.
To say what is going on right now, but yeah, I mean, I don't see him getting 300 carries. That's just something that's impossible. Knowing that we have so many other weapons, I don't think we're going to run him down to the ground. Now, the next topic that we want to get into is that they saying that what is the reason that Jeff Heat was attracted to, sign with the Raiders. Now, I mean, what made him attracted to us is, well, he thinks that how he fits in as well. But oftentimes the top free agents on the market do agree to terms with their new teams on day one of free agency. Such is the case for safety Jeff Heath. Now, the 29-year-old has spent his entire career with the Dallas Cowboys, and the past 3 seasons, which he was a full-time starting strong safety. The thing is, the Raiders have they already starting strong safeties with the 2019 first-round pick in Jonathan Abram, and now they also have Eric Harris, who started 15 games last season in relief of Abram, and adding safety Demarius Randall as well. Now, that begs the question of what exactly would he do when he fits in, and why the Raiders made an addition as a priority, and what made him want to join the team. Now, according to an in-house podcast, he shed some light on his decision to join the team. He said, as of now, he's pretty much buried in the depth chart at safety. In those instances, versatility and special teams are crucial. Is how Eric Harris have carved up out of his career, but eventually found his way to the starting lineup. But this is what Jeff Heath had to say. He said, that's kind of something that he started when he played in college, that he played the strong safety role, a free safety role, and kind of a nickel / outside linebacker type of player, which is becoming a lot more popular in the NFL now. He thinks that his versatility even allow him to make a career in the NFL, obviously on the defense, but more importantly on special teams. His first few years, he was running down, covering kicks, trying to block guys on returns, blocking kicks, or whatever it is. Just trying to be a versatile player and giving teams a reason to keep you on the roster. That's really his goal in the NFL, is to stay around as long as possible, winning as much as possible, and versatility is super important for that. So I feel like he's going to be a depth type of player, a depth chart type of player. I don't see him get any safety position, like safety time, depending on what happens to somebody gets injured like a Demarius Randall or Jonathan Abram, God forbid something happens to them. So that's kind of like my opinion on it. I feel like he's going to be a special teams guy, and he's going to bring another asset to especially on kickoff because he can tackle. So, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's awesome that Jeff Heath is coming into this situation, understanding that the Raiders have a lot of expectations for Jonathan Abram to be not only their starting, a starting safety for them, but a focal point of their defense, a team leader. He's the Raiders guy, right? They're banking a lot on him to pan out at the safety position. Demarius Randall should be also a starting quality safety. Everybody talks about Joyner potentially having some time there. So there's a lot of bodies, not to mention Eric Harris. So you have a lot of bodies there at the safety position. I think that at first, he is going to be playing a lot of special teams, but with Paul Gunther being able to utilize him in a couple different positions, even in like a linebacker type hybrid position, maybe that's the case too. So it's just good to know that he is very well aware what the Raiders situation is on defense, who they have in their personnel, and where he kind of fits there, and he's ready to do whatever.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Shout out to Butcher's Block. Butcher's Block, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the $2 donation. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother. Hopefully, we could definitely talk some Raiders and Patriots because we do play y'all this year, so we could definitely talk about that. So thank you for supporting. We really do appreciate it. Now, how I feel about Jeff Heath, I think he's going to come in and definitely help out as much as we can on special teams. And it brings me to the next topic about the kickoff, the new NFL bylaws for the 2020 season, approved by the 4th and 15th on an onside kick proposal. As well, they did make some new NFL bylaws for the onside kick. So it's a little bit of special teams. I just want to just address this a little bit as well. After much deliberation and leaks that regard to the bylaws of the rule changes as being proposed, NFL owners have finally decided on one of the changes that would implement, but it will not be at this time. But the new rule that was discussed was tabled was the rule that would give the option to team the lineup on the 4th and the 15th to attempt a onside kick. Now, typically, this would be an option to taken by the team that just has scored, but it's still behind without enough time to get the ball back and should they kick it off. But the rule was open to any team during the last 2 minutes of the game. One of the bylaws that the team will be allowed to return to 3 players from injured reserve during the season, up from 2. Now, there are other rule changes as well. They say in bylaw change increases the number of players that may be designated to return from injured reserve from 2 to 3 was approved Tom Pelissero from NFL Network. Another rule changes was made that make permanent expansion of an automatic replay reviews to include scoring plays, turnovers, and negated by a foul. They do expand the defensiveless player protection for kick return and punt return, and they prevent manipulation of the game clock with multiple deal ball fouls. And then you might expect when the word manipulation comes up, but Bill Belichick and the Patriots were doing it. They saying the NFL owners wrapped with the proposal to prevent sort of manipulation of the game clock with multiple dead ball penalties, with the clock running, done last season by the Patriots and the Titans. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on with the onside kicks and new fouls and new rules and stuff like that. How do you feel about any of these new rules that they're talking about? 805 Raider, I have to put that up there. The tuck rule, of course. That was never being called again after that. But, how you feel about everything that's going on here?
Well, I'm kind of glad that they tabled that 4th and 15 rule. I feel like there was just a little bit too many ins and outs with that, and kind of too many ways that you can interpret it and kind of utilize it, and questions on how teams could or could not use it, or when they could not use it. It seemed a little sloppy to me. I like the premise, honestly. Onside kicks are kind of just, they're not really a thing anymore in the NFL. But I'm glad they knew they didn't have something succinct and something kind of that was a better option out of the box. So they tabled it for a little while, and I'm fine with that. As far as the other rules, I'm not really crazy here or there with any of them. For or against. I thought it was funny the way that the Patriots and the Titans kind of tried to manipulate the clock, especially against each other towards the end of halves in their playoff games. But it doesn't make the game any more exciting, so I'm sure that's probably why they're trying to tinker with that. But it doesn't really bother me all that much.
It doesn't really bother me either, and I see that you're getting dark over there because the sun is going down.
Yeah, this room doesn't really have a lot of lighting, so I apologize on that. Hopefully, you can still hear
Yeah,
me.
hopefully y'all can still hear you and see you as well. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out the way because I know they've been really talking about changing the actual rules of like knowing that the tuck rule and all that extra stuff that was going on as well. But we just going to go straight into the next topic at hand. Now, the next topic at hand that we do have is the Mount Rushmore of Raiders wide receivers. Now, this is something that I really wanted to talk about because Mount Rushmore, you only can have four up there. You only can have four up there. I don't know if you were able to look at that article. Was you able to look at that article, Eli?
Yeah, I was, and I mean, I for the most part, I kind of agree with them.
I wasn't able to look at it just yet. I was not able to look at it just yet, but we're definitely going to go into the Mount Rushmore of the Raiders wide receivers. And the four wide receivers that they had on here as the Mount Rushmore. The first one was Tim Brown. We don't need to explain much about him. We did talk about Tim Brown on the Dream Team starting offense, so it's not really too much we can say there about Tim Brown. We already know his stature up there being a part of the Raiders. Fred Bilenikoff, we already talked about him on there as well. We talked about Stickum as well, and he played majority. He played all his seasons with the Raiders. One of the greatest receivers in Raiders history outside of Cliff Branch, which Cliff Branch is on this list. With Art Powell. So we're going to go into Art Powell first because we didn't get a chance to talk about him. So Art Powell spent 4 years with the Raiders, but in that time he put up 4,491 yards, which equals an average of 1,222 yards per season. So when considering a run-heavy era, Powell played in this era with those numbers. He played in the era with those numbers, and it would look more impressive. While spending 4 seasons with the team, Powell was in the 4th in franchise receiving yards, leaders of wide receivers. He put up a whooping 16 touchdowns in the 1963 season, and a total of 50 total touchdown ranks, 4th in the franchise history. Again, he achieved all this in just 4 years. And then you have Cliff Branch. Cliff Branch definitely will close out this list. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Branch is one of the only Raiders receivers that played in 3 team Super Bowl wins. He totaled 8,685 yards receiving his illustrious career. Good enough, 3rd in franchise history, and also had 3rd most touchdowns in Raiders history back in 1967. Now, Branch was one of the great humans off the field. He was always was a prime example of a perfect player. The Raider Nation was definitely blessed to have him on the field for 14 seasons. While the Hall of Fame may not recognize his greatness, but the Raiders will. That's a fact. So, before we get into the honorable mentions of this, how you feel about that? That Mount Rushmore of Raiders wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll talk about some of the honorable mentions, and I think that the one thing that you got to kind of take into consideration is how short Jerry Rice's term was here with the Raiders. And I think that really just makes it all the more difficult to really put him up there as a real Raiders Mount Rushmore. Obviously, he goes there as a 49ers on their Mount Rushmore of football, let alone wide receivers. So I think as far as like being the top four, Art Powell was he was kind of synonymous with creating the whole speed kills kind of long ball game that Al Davis wanted to instill with the Raiders. Before there was Cliff Branch, before there was really even before there was Bolitnikoff, there was Art Powell with the Raiders. He was the first great long deep threat for the AFL that was synonymous with the long ball. So I think that just because he was the first to do it, you kind of got to give him you kind of got to give it to him to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Right. The honorable mentions that they do have here is they have Jerry Rice and they have James Jett. How you feel about those honorable mentions, knowing that Jerry Rice wasn't not with us long, but we all know Jerry Rice for as being a 49er and not really being a Raider as much, knowing that we did go to the Super Bowl with him and Tim Brown and James Jett. James Jett is one of the ones that could be honorable mention as well. But how you feel about those two honorable mentions for the wide receiver Mount Rushmore?
I mean, it's difficult, right? Because the Raiders didn't have a ton of great wide receivers outside of the big three, right? And you would say Art Powell and would be up there, but he only played 4 years. A guy like Mervin Fernandez was probably in the late 80s, early 90s. They're probably their best receiving threat, but he was only really very good for a handful of years. Willie Galt played, from the late 80s to the mid 90s. Didn't really have a great career with the Raiders. So James Jett played an awful long time with Oakland. I think it was. I think he started in L.A. in like '93 or something like that. And so he played a long time with the Raiders. Was never a number one receiving threat. So it's hard to kind of give him that edge. So you maybe have to give it to Jerry Rice as an honorable mention to put in there, but I still don't think that Rice takes over Art Powell as the fourth wide receiver on there. I don't really know who else you would even put in as a potential.
So for you, Carol, I don't know if you saw the top four.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's talking about.
I don't know if you saw the actual Mount Rushmore. The Mount Rushmore was Cliff Branch, it was Fred Belintikoff, it was Tim Brown, and it was Art Powell. Those top four, I don't think you can replace. Those top four guys for Mount Rushmore, I don't think you can replace any of those four. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion as well. But I do feel like when it comes to those four wide receivers and having a Jerry Rice as an honorable mention, it's kind of tough. But Warren Wells is definitely an honorable mention as well.
Yeah, I mean, he only played a handful of years too. Just the same as the same as Jerry Rice, but there wasn't a lot of longevity. I think that's why the guys like Cliff Branch, the guys like Blitnikoff and Tim Brown, who were longtime Raiders, really stand out as the big three. Then you have Art Powell, and the rest of the crew is kind of really down there as far as people trying to get up on that list. I don't really see any of the modern wide receivers being there. Hopefully at one point in 5-6 years after a couple Super Bowl wins, we look at Henry Ruggs as potentially being one of those guys. We all thought that Amari Cooper was going to be on there. So, we'll have to see.
Yeah, so that is the sorry Jerry Rice, but no, yeah, Jerry Rice absolutely. He's a GOAT as a wide receiver in the league, but he's not our GOAT. He's not the Raiders GOAT.
Right.
So we're going to the next topic, which is potential replacements for Raiders DC Paul Guttner. This is an interesting topic here. And as the Silver and Black prepare for their inaugural season in Las Vegas, um, the pressure is mounting on the members of the coaching staff, especially the defensive coordinator, Paul Guttner, has received a widespread of scrutiny from the team's struggles on the defensive side of the ball in the past 2 seasons. Now, this offseason in the front office, they have ejected a high dosage of young defensive talent for years to come, which former Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Ron Millinari joining the staff, and Guttner's future hangs in the balance. According to this, they says Paul Guttner has only proven that, they start off well and then they get so complacent, and people want to know, like, do you remember where, above the photo was taken when it was captured? It was a photo was where, the worst loss in John Gruden's history, where we got blown out by the Kansas City Chiefs, and it didn't look well.
No, I think it was
It
the
did.
Niners. It was
Oh,
like
Niners.
the
Yeah,
third
31
one
to
back.
3. It was the Niners, 31 to 3. That was just terrible. 31 to D, and they had Nick Mullins from Hoover, Alabama, made his first career start against us and demolished us, meaning that he had 16 of 22 completions, 220 yards, 3 pass touchdowns, no interceptions, and no sacks, as Paul Guttner as the defensive coordinator. Um, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like they're going to have a replacement for Paul Guttner, knowing that if he doesn't do well, they're going to replace him with Ron Millinari?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about this before. Yeah, I mean, Marinelli's on the staff, I think, for a reason. And it's not just to make the defensive line perform better. It's, hey, Paul, if you don't get this ship righted and you don't get a defense that can at least compete and not be one of the worst defenses in the league with all this new talent that you're getting, you're going to take a seat, and Marinelli is probably going to step in and be the defensive coordinator for an interim period of time. It goes on further to discuss some other potential, future defensive coordinators, which I think that's a little premature for that. But I do think that I think that Paul Gunther's defense needs to perform well by the bye, and if it doesn't, there could be a change. I know that some people think that his job is much more of a lock than even Derek Carr is for the full season. I disagree. I think that, Paul Gunther hasn't had any talent, but as a defensive coordinator, you need to maximize your talent. And if you're not, I don't have the type of personnel, you're going to need to just change the way that you coach and the way that your schemes are to do something to turn the ball over or, to stop people, because he really just couldn't with whoever he put in there. So, I think that Marinelli comes in if the defense is still in the bottom of the league half year. He'll be the defensive coordinator for the rest of the year. But I do think that John Gruden replaces him with a full-time defensive coordinator that's not Rob Marinelli in 2021, if that's the case.
I don't even know how to respond to that, because you just took all the words right out of my mouth. 805 Raider did say that Marinelli is to Gunther like Mariota is to Carr. I disagree with that part of it. Bro, stupid ass coaching though. That's according to Watts Raider. But I've been wanting to get rid of Paul Guttner for a long time. I've been wanting to get rid of him for a while. I just think he does not fit with us and what we're trying to do here. I don't know if his scheme fits what we're trying to do, but in the same token, I just feel like, I don't know, it's just something about Paul Guttner that makes me not like him as a defensive coordinator. I don't know. It's just something about him. It's just, I don't know if it's his demeanor or he just don't bring the spark to the rest of the team or the rest of the defense. I just don't know. I just don't know what we're going to get out of him. Another story that I wanted to talk about is Richie Incognito. According to RaiderRamble.com, they saying this could be Richie Incognito best year ever. They saying most professional athletes tend to hit their peak in their 20s, and Incognito hit it at the age of 37 with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, throughout the decade plus NFL career, Incognito has experienced many ups and downs. Early on in his career, he struggled with inconsistent play on the field and a myriad of issues that's definitely off the field as well. But recently, things seem to be, trending for Incognito in the direction for the veteran guard to put, to be on and off the field. Me personally, even at 37, he could finally have a breakout season, becomes recognized as one of the elite offensive linemen in the NFL. He got to get back to being healthy as well, knowing that he played his time in Buffalo, which he suddenly retired in 2008, but he wanted to come back and once he's healthy, he's a good offensive lineman. But he wants to build off a strong 2019 season. According to Pro Football Focus, he has the league highest pass blocking grade amongst all left guards. He did, despite taking a year off in 2018 and missing some games due to suspension and injury, are likely keeping him from making his fifth Pro Bowl. But likewise, his run blocking grade was significantly lower than his pass blocking grade, which was, I think, he wants to improve on. But the bottom line is that Incognito is likely closer to the end of his career than the beginning, but he could be closer to his peak than ever before. His last several seasons, he has been, some of his best, and now he has seen some off the field issues under control. He will be in his second season with us and projected the same offensive line as last season, and the team to look to, push for a playoff spot. So I feel like with Incognito, he might have a breakout year, depending on health issues. But how? My question is, how do you feel about Incognito? Might have a breakout year, and do you think he might retire after this year?
I think that Richie Incognito is one of my favorite stories of last year, and probably one of my favorite Raiders on the team at the moment. I'm very sensitive and to personal and mental wellness and the effect that these athletes have on their daily lives and their mental wellness in general, just having such a stressful job and all this stuff, and I think that he really took the time to make himself healthy from a mental standpoint and a personal standpoint. I think that he feels good in the organization. I don't know if you saw the the article about him and his dad, even before he got signed to the Raiders, were looking to move to Las Vegas together and be Raiders fans. Before his dad passed away, that's what they were going to do. They were going to move to Vegas, live in the desert and be Raiders fans. So I think that he's happy here with the Raiders. I think he's in a better place mentally than he's been in a long time. He's playing at a high level, and I think he can continue to play at a high level past this year. I think if he gets through this year healthy and the Raiders perform well, it's going to be because of that offensive line. So you're obviously going to see him play at a high level. I think that if he stays healthy, the Raiders offensive line is going to be good. They're going to be a playoff team, and he's going to be playing again in 2021. And if that's the case, I officially am going to get a Richie Incognito jersey because I like him that much. He's the man, and he's had his past, and he's definitely troubled, and he's certainly not one of the most likable people maybe 10 or 6 or 7 years ago, but he's gone through a lot, and I think he's made himself a better person, and he's talked about some of the things that he's gone through and steps that he's taken to be a better person, and I applaud that.
Yeah, I applaud too. I think Richie Incognito is he's a good offensive lineman. He's turning his life around, and I couldn't be more happier to have him on the football team, knowing that he's going to be different for us. He's definitely a difference maker, and he definitely helps contribute on that offensive line. And last but not least, I really wanted to get into this because we've been having these issues with our Raiders offense, and I have to say, the third quarter offense must improve in 2020. Um, a lot of people have been tweeting about it, saying the Raiders offense averaged the worst 0.66 points per drive in the third quarter last year. Defense allowed 2.6 points per drive in the third quarter, and that's second worst in the NFL. plenty of blame to spread around. According to it says Josh DeBow. I don't know who he is. In some instance, but so he tweeted out another thing as well. He tweeted out that he is like Derek Carr's passer rating by quarter last season, which it was first quarter 111 yards, which is eighth best. Second quarter was 106 yards, which is sixth best. Third quarter 78.6 yards, which is 26th best, and 100.9 yards, and that's 10th best in the fourth quarter. Poor third quarter performance to me, and I have to agree with it because third quarter is always was a struggle with us, and in that reasoning, I just feel like when it comes to like the third quarter, we just have to be better. I think we have to show some type of urgency, especially if we're down. It's like we have no sense of urgency in the third quarter at all. So, what's your thoughts on it? What you think that we need to improve with our third quarter offense?
I think they hit the nail on the head saying that there is plenty to blame kind of across the board, right? Both sides of the offense, both sides of the team, as far as coaching staff, really has not been effective in making or accounting for halftime changes by the opposing team. They've kind of just really been conservative on their end about what they change. Gruden's probably one of the best scripters in the first quarter as far as his offense, but he really kind of just keeps it vanilla in the third quarter. And in a few games that really came back to hurt the Raiders with a quick 3-and-out or an ineffective offensive start. And then the defense just really not being able to handle anybody's second half adjustments at all. And I think that really set the tone, because then the offense really couldn't get back on track to what Gruden liked to do. Carr and Gruden really started forcing things, and then the whole thing is out of whack for the entire third quarter, which is why you see the low performance ratings. So yes, I think 100% it comes down to not only execution, but it also comes down to the coaching staffs really getting better at preparing the teams to come out in the second half raring to go on both ends, the sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I feel like it's time for us to. John Gruden got to make adjustments, and I feel like sometimes John Gruden should pick up an offensive coordinator, and I know that he's an offensive mind, and I know John Gruden would like to call his own offense. I can completely understand that, but in the same token, that third quarter we struggled so bad in the third quarter last year. I wanted to turn the game off. I wanted to turn the goddamn game off. And it's been times that I have because of just the third quarter performance. Like it's been times we were in games and we were so complacent and we were so conservative that we wasn't even attacking them in the third quarter. So that's just my personal opinion on that.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's crazy. If you look and you go back at some of those games and watch the condensed versions, you'll watch the first half and just look and be like, how in the world did we lose this football game? They look like a juggernaut in the first quarter, and sometimes just the entire first half. I mean, look at that Bears game, for example. The first quarter, it looked like, the Raiders were a juggernaut, and the Jacksonville Jaguars game was the same, but, they won one and lost one. So, yeah, they definitely need to perform, execute, and better play calling on both ends of the ball third quarter for sure.
definitely, definitely. So that is all the topics that we do have for tonight's show. We are going to open up the floor for anybody that do have questions. That's from Facebook and that's from YouTube. So if you do have any questions, is it stupid to talk about last year? It's not stupid to talk about last year because all we can do is learn from last year. In my personal opinion, we do have like a half hour to talk about more Raiders news, or if y'all have any questions for us, let us know and we can get that done. Let's see. Is it like we want to get cute, cocky, or just no urgency? That's crazy too. 805 Raider says, hold up. 805 Raider says RD has been trashed too. Put up 40 or lose. Um, Wasp Raider says Carr forced the pass is why Renfro got hurt. I don't know about that. And I'm going to be completely honest on that. I don't think he forced the pass. I just think that it was just a real illegal hit by Jamal Adams that the NFL did not see and they did not look over. That's why Hunter Renfrow got hurt. It was on a defensive player, and the NFL definitely embraces like, oh, they want player safety, but no call was called at that time when Hunter Renfrow did get hurt and got smacked. I was at that game. I seen it firsthand, and it was an illegal hit. So I don't think Carr was the reason why Hunter Renfrow got hurt. I kind of disagree on that personally. But any other questions that we have? Okay, so we do have another question here from Dale Swain. Do you think the rookie wide receivers move ahead of some of the veteran wide receivers? I'm gonna let you take the floor with this one.
Yeah, I do. I think that Henry Ruggs obviously is going to move into one of the starting wide receiver spots. I think we're all kind of confident in his ability to be, if not a number one, at least a starting quality wide receiver to start out. And I think that he's going to be up there. And I think that Edwards is going to push both Aguilar and whoever the sixth wide receiver is down the depth chart. Now, I do think that Williams will stay at one of the top wide receiver spots. So I don't see Williams and Renfro going anywhere. They're going to still be part of the top three. But I do see Ruggs jumping into that top three, and then having Edwards. I do like his game, and I think that with his size, he's going to be able to at least compete and step in as a fourth option, and that's going to push guys again like Aguilar and Zay Jones down the bottom of the depth chart, and he's going to see a lot more playing time than them. But I look for Ruggs to. I really want to believe in Henry Ruggs. I think that he's going to come in and just be a difference maker.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I feel like um that the younger wide receivers could definitely take the veteran wide receivers. I definitely can um think that they could definitely take over in my personal opinion. Um but I'll definitely go look over the film about the Hunter Renfro. Raider Ben, what's going on, Raider Ben? Shout out to Raider Ben. If y'all have not subscribed to Raider Ben, definitely go subscribe to him as well. Raider Ben, I would like to have you on the show next week with Watts Raider if y'all want to be on. So Raider Ben, if you definitely want to come on here and talk with us, that's absolutely fine. Just hit me up. Just send me your email or something, that we could definitely go from there. Let's see what other questions that we have. I know it was another question that I saw, if I'm not mistaken. Watch the film, bro. Blah, blah, blah. I agree for it. He was double covered. What's your opinion on Javin White? He's versatile. What's your opinion on Javin White so far?
Undrafted, linebacker safety kind of hybrid, not unlike Taylor Muse in the fact that he played a lot of safety in college, and they're expecting him to step in and perform at linebacker. I hear a lot of the fact that if the Raiders did have later round picks, they would have selected Javin White out of UNLV, but as an undrafted free agent, especially in this COVID times with very little off-season field work, it's going to be tough for these guys to make the team. Lucky for him, the Raiders linebacking core after their top two players isn't really anything to brag about. So I think him and Muse have all the opportunity in the world to step in and show their talent and show what they're made of, and make a run at not only making the team, but perhaps cracking in some plays at linebacker, as well as contributing on special teams. So, Javin White, I think out of all the, him and Madre are probably going to have the best chance of making the team as the undrafted free agents.
I can agree as well. I think Javin White would be a great asset to the linebacker core, especially with the younger linebacker core, like you said with Tanner Muse. I think that that Javin White is definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder, knowing he is coming from UNLV, and I do wish that he will make the team because I think his athleticism is definitely needed at the linebacker position. So we definitely need to definitely need to have him on the team as well. But do anybody have any other questions for us? Let us know now. And then if not, then we can just go off and just, be all we can be from here. So, but how you feeling about the Raiders offseason talk? Knowing we waiting for the questions to come in. How are you feeling about the offseason so far for the Raiders? Do you think the see what's going to look like for the season, knowing there's no OTAs right now?
I think everybody's kind of just waiting, obviously, to see what's going on. But I am slowly news is trickling in that's a little bit more positive. Obviously, we have a setback with a lot of the stuff that's going on across the country right now. But from a pure football standpoint, I think one of the decisions the Raiders are making that is going to help them out is I believe that they're making things set so that they are going to move directly to Las Vegas for training camp, and they're not going to have their training camp in Alameda. They're going to move into their Henderson facility in Nevada, and just have everything based there. And I think that's the best idea, right? That's the best choice. You're not having any sort of issues where you're kind of moving the team back and forth, and you're kind of hustling, bustling, and moving equipment, moving all this stuff. I think you go ahead, you just move home. Let's just get into Las Vegas. Let's spread out the blankets. Let's be there. Let's be the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's embrace it. I know that they wanted to stay in California to try to appease some of the Oakland and Bay Area fans, and I know that was the best intention for the team and Mark Davis to do that. But we're the Vegas Raiders now, and it's in this time of kind of uncertainty. Let's get home and let's stay home in Nevada.
Yeah, and that's just where I'm at. I'm just hoping that we could probably get some fans in the stands, which I don't think is going to happen. In my personal opinion, I don't think we're going to have fans in the stands, but I really wish we did. I really wish we did. What you eating for dinner? I got nachos, chicken burritos. 805 Raider Fierce Raider said, "Yeah, every offense does that, but doesn't mean you play the quarterback position like a damn robot." 805 said, "Wife pregnant. I'm having my first boy in September. Congratulations, 805 Raider. Congratulations, my brother. Really do appreciate that. We appreciate you being a loyal fan to us. But do anybody have any other questions before we head out? We don't want to miss out on any of the questions about the Raiders. We will be a little bit more consistent on here. It's just that the holiday got us out. The Memorial Day got us in a way, and I was at my mom's house for a week with no equipment, so I wasn't able to upload anything or try to do any other content at all. So, any final thoughts before we head out? Because that seems like, oh, my bad. We do got a question. My bad. Raider Ben, definitely hit me up on Twitter or put your Twitter in the comments so I can follow you and you can follow me back, and then we can see about that. Dave Swan says, "Do you think the punt return and kick return Harris will be removed by a rookie or not Aguilar?"
I think they're going to try to take a really strong look at Bowden in the punt return game and the kick return game for sure. Aguilar is a potential in both of those as well. I think with the increased talent at wide receiver, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to carry just a specific special teams guy, especially since, even with the extra, positions in the 55-man roster, and you can activate 53. I still think that it's going to be difficult to kind of just have a just special teams guy as your returner this year, when there's a little bit more talent at the wide receiver position. But that's just my opinion on that.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it anymore like that. I feel like they're gonna let Lynn Bowden actually do some punt return and some kick return to try to get him on the field as much as possible. Um, I think Harris might going to help out with special teams. And then you have, Jeff Heath. He's not going to be a kick returner or a punt returner, but he's definitely going to help in tackling and blocking on special teams as well. So yeah, I definitely do agree there. I do see not Harris being moved by a rookie or not Aguilar. I mean, I don't see it happen. I just think they're going to do a lot of rotational when it comes to the special teams. Denton says, "Would it be better indoors for field goals?" Um, I mean, it would be better. It wouldn't be better for us. I mean, we already play in warm weather in Vegas, so it's not like that would be an issue. But knowing that most of I think our indoor is going to be better indoors, knowing that we have a better field. We don't have the dirt field like we did last year, so I think that's going to make a big factor, knowing that our building is kind of indoor outdoor in some instance.
I mean, without the dirt field, it's going to make a whole world of difference. That's just it was just such an atrocity, and you can talk to all the kickers that kicked in Oakland. No one liked kicking off that dirt field, and it wasn't like it was a home field advantage for us because our kickers hated kicking off it too. So I do think the kicking game will be a little bit more consistent throughout the year without having to play like the first 3 games or whatever on the dirt field.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chris says, let's talk about the way we're going to be able to view this season. And what way you want to view this season, Chris Martinez? Um, like as far as like record prediction or
I think he's talking about as far as like watching the games. Maybe I don't know.
well, me of watching the games. I know on this channel I'll be doing live play by play and reactions of the Raiders games. I'll have the scoreboard up and everything, and I'll be giving y'all play by play on both sides of the ball, defense and offense, which I did last year when I had this channel. So I want to attend as many games as possible. But honestly, I mean, I want to attend as many games as possible. Hopefully, we can have people come in. Hopefully, we have fans in the stands. I just don't know how that's going to happen, but I do feel like this season is going to be very interesting for us. Knowing with the whole pandemic and everything that's going on within the world right now, it's tough. So, yeah.
I would
So,
just
how you feel
yeah,
about it?
I would just expect. I mean, you got to make all the plans, right? Like, if you're looking to go to a certain game in Vegas, make the plans in that you want to go, and that's fine. But I would err on the side of not being able to go into games. I mean, the tickets are on sale, people are buying them. Get your hotels booked, but make sure that you can get refunds or on those hotels because I don't really see at this point how you know full NFL stadiums at the very least are going to be a thing at all this year. Now, you have a talking about potentially, making it partial. If that's the case, I don't even know how they begin to do that with like the season tickets. Like, do you only get like one game or 4 games, or how they're going to do it, and then how are they going to do that on the secondary markets like StubHub and stuff like that. So I would go ahead if
See, oh,
if Vegas is back and people are back in Vegas, perhaps they're going to have some sort of way that you can socially distance and watch the games in a public space outside, whether that's near the stadium or something like. Yeah, I don't see them having people being involved in the stadium this year.
and it's kind of unfortunate that knowing that we have a brand new stadium and we're not able to be there. It's kind of unfortunate. No, but I mean, it happens. It happens to the best of us, knowing that what's going on in the world is probably the reason why that we probably won't have fans in the stands. Tampa Bay game. I'm kind of excited for the Tampa Bay game. Tom Brady going up against the Raiders after how long? So it's good to see to have him, come back and play us. But I don't know what just happened to um I don't know what just happened to Eli. I think let me try to go back out, and I think he froze up, so I'm gonna kick you from the studio and I'm gonna change it real quick. Give me a second and wait for him to come back. Um Wait for him to come back. I don't know what actually happened to the live, but the question was, do you think that affects players' play? Yes. What's going on, West Branch Ball? What's going on, West Branch Ball? What's going on? Yes, I do think it affects players' play just because of the momentum that you get. The momentum that you get as a player. I'm waiting for Eli to come back in. It's saying his device is not connected. I'm just waiting for Eli to come in, and then we can finish up this podcast. But at the same time, I feel like um, it does help. The crowd do be pumping them up, and the crowd do be helping them out a lot. So I will say this: it's going to take a lot from us. It's going to take a lot from us. For some reason, he's saying your device is not connected, Eli. So I don't know what happened. Doing well. I'm just stopping by. Make sure y'all hit that like button. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to me on YouTube as well. Janikowski kicks made a lot of 50 plus yards kicks, including the tie with the 63-yard kick. That was great. That boy is clutch, but I bet he would kick downfield. Janikowski made some good tackles on kickoffs. He absolutely did. Absolutely did. He had no problem with that. But yeah, like I'm just waiting for Eli to come back, and once Eli comes back, then we can do our final thing. We could do our final statements of the show. But yeah, that boy is built like a linebacker. Yeah, he's built. Janikowski always been built like a linebacker. I think he finally retired. If I'm not mistaken, I think he finally retired. So with that being said, I don't know what happened with Eli, but just on the Spotlight Raiders talk, I will be doing these shows. I was gonna do it every day of the week, but there's not a lot of Raiders news coming out, so I probably do it every Sunday. I do it every Tuesday, every Thursday, and probably do like a Friday night hangout. But I definitely got to be more consistent on here with y'all because I feel like we have not gave much. So um, uh, on the behalf of me and on the behalf of me and Eli, we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Eli is back because I was going to say we thank you for tuning in, but Eli is officially back. Let me put this back here.
Yeah, so I'm back in a different room.
That's actually a pretty brighter too. It's pretty
Yeah,
brighter too. So
kind of looks a little bit better. Maybe this is a better spot for next week anyway. So
right. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want to hold it up if everybody's kind of done. Yeah.
So he said, "How about a rookie retro comparison podcast? Like as far as like position battles is what you're saying, Larry Fleming, like position battles or like what you mean by rookie retro comparison? Do you know what he mean by that?
I don't, but I mean, it sounds cool.
I really don't know either. So any final thoughts before we head out? Because we are going to have this on Spotify and we are going to have this on Anchor tomorrow morning. No, bro, I just showed up. Yeah, we've been on. We usually do almost a hour and 40 minutes or a 2 hour show. If you compare the rookies to who, that's what I'm
Oh,
trying to say.
maybe like retro people, or like compare
Oh,
the rookies
like
to
rookies from back in the day, from former greats to what they are now. That's
yeah.
something me and Eli could definitely talk about.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a great idea that we could definitely talk about. I know, Chris, we just got here, but we've been doing this for a while. We've been doing this for an hour and 45 minutes. But it's definitely going to be on, like I was saying earlier, it's going to be on Anchor and it's going to be on Spotify tomorrow morning. Y'all do not want to miss it at all. Any final thoughts, Eli, before we head out?
No, I'm just hoping again that everybody stays safe out there. I know that there's some serious heavy shit going on right now in the country and throughout the country. So everybody, please stay safe. And I know that I speak for Darion and myself. My thoughts and my thoughts are with all you guys and and gals. So try to do what you got to do, but be as safe as possible. Okay.
Absolutely. And there's two more questions. We're gonna take two more questions before we end. Fierce Raider says, "Do y'all think Jordan will be replaced this year?" Um, I don't think he will be replaced this year. Um, I think he's going to play it out. He might get benched, but he's good. He might get benched, but as far as like replaced, if he doesn't show up this year, he'll be replaced at free agency.
Yeah, I think that if he doesn't perform, the Raiders have a couple different options at the slot, right? When we've talked about this a few times on the podcast. I personally, and I think I just might just I have a hunch Joyner just can't be that bad. He underperformed so much last year that it's so shocking compared to how he's performed in the past. And now I know that he was a much better safety with the Rams, but even at slot corner, he was never really that terrible. He just really had a bad season last year. Something tells me that he is going to be the most improved player on the Raiders in 2020. I don't know why. I just have this hunch that in week 10 or whatever, or after the bye, everyone's going to remember, shit, you know what? Eli said that Joyner was going to be better, and he honestly has played a lot better. For some reason, I think that's going to be the case, and Amik Robertson is going to have some time to slowly be brought along and be the slot cornerback of the future.
He hit it right on the money, y'all. He hit it right on the money. And the last question that we have of the night, do you guys still think Derek Carr is our quarterback? We had this conversation so many times on this podcast. Yes, as of right now, Derek Carr is our quarterback until proven differently. Um, Knowing that hopefully Derek Carr can actually show up and play this year with the weapons that he have and the weapons that we have at receiver, tight end, and running back, and the offensive line can hold up for him. But until then, Derek Carr is our quarterback. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Um, Anything you got to say about you think Derek Carr is still our quarterback?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. As of right now, Derek Carr is our quarterback, and he is the guy, the best bet to lead our offense week one at this point. I don't think that there's any free agent options available that are better to start on week one than a Derek Carr that knows this offense. I don't think anybody brings a extremely better talent that outweighs his knowledge of that system. I think he's going to have a respectable year. And I think that with the defense performing better, the offensive weapons may be performing better. All that's going to equate to a playoff season. And if that happens, no one is going to care as much about Derek Carr. I'm sure he'll still have his haters, but if the Raiders make the playoffs, the hating will stop a little bit more.
And my final thoughts for tonight's show is that everyone just stay safe, knowing that Philadelphia is in a big uproar with the looting and the rioting. It's a lot going on in our nation, not just the city of Philadelphia. I just want everyone to stay safe from COVID-19. Everyone stay safe from this pandemic. Everyone stay safe from what's going on in our nation. But as far as Raiders concerned, we just waiting for the season to start, and that's why we do these podcasts to get our minds off the stuff that's going on in the nation. We want we want to talk about football and we want to talk about sports because some of this stuff can really be depressing, and most of when we talk about our Raiders, we're very passionate about what we talk about, and we put time and effort to put these shows together every Sunday or every Monday for you. So we're going to try to bring more content to you as well, not just every Sunday or every Monday. We're going to try to at least be a little bit more consistent, but we do want to thank everyone for coming out and being a part of it on Facebook, even on Bigo Live, even on YouTube as well. Thank y'all so much for being here. Please keep supporting us as much as possible. We almost at 2.8K. So we're trying to get there as much as possible. Anything else you got to say, Eli?
No, everybody stay safe, stay strong. All right.
All right, and that is the show for the night for the live Q&A podcast. This is Darion. That's Eli. Just win, baby.